We are here to mark the coming 10th anniversary of that sad day. I'm Brian Rotherley. I'm a retired writer, journalist, and I live here in Wexford in Ireland. I coordinate the British-Irish part of a network that helps parents who are fighting against social services to keep their children. One of the most important parts of our work is that we are trying to persuade the authorities to regard the parents, and especially the mother, as part of the child protection equation. Now that may seem obvious, and it's actually in the legislation, but unfortunately it's far from what is actually practiced on the ground. 1 year after this sad event, when fishermen found the bodies the next morning in the waters here, the coroner was furious at the inquest to learn that, despite the tragedy, that nothing in 1 year had changed back at Ely House. This caused a national furore, so they changed the rules. And the rules were that if a mother now calls with children looking for help, the police are phoned, the police arrive, they seize the children, and the mother can leave and do what she wishes. Once the children are taken and fostered, the new foster parent receives over €16,000 a year, tax-free, for each child fostered.
The social workers' job's to think the unthinkable, because sometimes terrible things happen.
That was Gordon Jays, Head of Child Protection Services at Cambridgeshire Local Authority, speaking on BBC's Panorama after a notorious case in which a couple were almost imprisoned, falsely accused of causing fractures to their child. They had just been cleared in court after a long battle which they'd carried out themselves, and not only had they cleared their own names, they had in fact exposed two expert witnesses on the medical side who had produced false evidence against them. This is the head of the Cambridgeshire Local Authority who had brought the case against them, speaking not in their defence, but speaking in defence of his own system. And what he has to say is most interesting, because he says that it is the job of the social worker to think the unthinkable. Thus he states the ideology of social services, which is that parents are a threat to their children. Parents are not part of the child protection agenda. We can ignore the fact that evolution itself has decided that throughout the animal kingdom and the humanity, parents are the ones best equipped to look after children. He's saying no, the state knows best. This in fact is fascism. So what happened to Gordon Jays after this event? Well, he left the UK and he came to Ireland, where last year he got the top job in the Child Protection Agency in Ireland, the National State Agency, and in fact he would be the boss of the people here in Ely House, outside of which I stand today. My involvement with social services began with the tragic drowning of Sharon Grace and her two daughters, who sought help here, but it was kick-started into real action in the years that followed by my attempts to help some mainly British mothers who came here looking for help also. And I had a run-in here, for example, with a head of child protection, one of the people who now works for Gordon Jays. And when I said to him, when I complained to him that he wasn't taking a mother's well-being into account, he stridently replied to me, "But we are a child protection service." In other words, restating the ideology that the parent is not part of the child protection agenda. One 22-year-old British mother who just had her 5-year-old daughter taken was crossing the bridge when, to her horror, the daughter drove past with her new foster parent waving frantically to her. The mother called me screaming from the bridge, and had I not been able to come down and help her and start her in the long fight back to get her daughter back, she possibly could have thrown herself into the waters here.
This 22-year-old mother was 3 months pregnant. The social workers neither asked nor cared. This is child protection.
This is a converted stable beside my house in County Wexford. It's actually called the Barn. It's become quite famous, or infamous, because it's become known as a safe house now for families fleeing from British social services. Now, it's no longer a safe house as one can imagine because of the publicity that's been received, and because British social services now, with help from their Irish colleagues and help from the Irish authorities, will send the police around here occasionally, who come very polite indeed, and ask me about families that are missing. But what it does serves as a meeting place for the other people who are helping me in the network. It also is a meeting place for families who are still legally able to come and travel here, and especially for families who are actually fighting back successfully through the courts to keep their children. So what's going on here across the English-speaking world?
Adding to it, for instance, on the issue of solicitors, a social worker who was unhappy with the way the system operated came to see me about 3 or 4 years ago, knowing of my concerns about the system, and he explained how he, as a social worker in Birmingham, used to sit down with solicitors, the parents' solicitors, and work out how to make sure the parents lost their case.
Did we hear that correctly? The social worker sat down with the solicitor acting for the parents to decide how they would lose their children. Who made this incredible statement? It was John Hemming, MP, speaking at a forced adoptions conference. At this conference he also said
that there are professional liars. There are people who go round and lie for money, and that the judges have to rely to some extent on those. Now, they are not all like that.
So who are these professional liars? Social workers, expert witnesses who can be paid up to €30,000 for each report saying why parents should lose their children, and solicitors. Ian Josephs, who started the Help Network, also called solicitors professional losers because they get paid whether they win or lose for a family. Speaking at that conference after John Hemming was Denise Robertson, MBE, writer and television broadcaster.
And I then found out how vengeful social services can be when they want to be, because the head of that social services twice tried to lose me my job. And if I hadn't had a boss who looked into things but then decided I was in the right, I would not be here today and would not be an agony aunt on television.
She had found out how vengeful social workers could be. Sadly, so have many parents who try to argue or fight back or contradict social workers, and ended up becoming the very wrecks that social services said they were, having been wrecked by social workers, and ending up in court sobbing and inarticulate while the social worker nods towards her and more or less saying to the judge, "Look, Judge, she can't cope. She has become what social services said she was." Even after we have been to the High Court, we have found social workers coming back in a form of vengeance and carrying out a kind of malicious campaign against the parents that have just been cleared in the High Court. Now, in my opinion, this demonstrates not just a contempt for the High Court and a contempt for the judges, but I believe that it actually demeans the justice system, because how can any of us have respect for a court which, after it has made a judgment, is then treated with such lack of respect by social workers who appear to be above the law? Now, while we still have much faith in the court system, indeed great faith in the court system still here in Ireland, sadly to say, no such faith now exists in the court system in the United Kingdom.
When the family courts were first mentioned, I welcomed them. I thought they would be a parent and child friendly place where good things could happen. I now consider them to be a modern version of the Star Chamber, a secret place where wicked things are done. I don't agree with the idea that every social worker is a monster. I think that some of them are sadistic bullies, I think more of them are filled with the idea that they're on a crusade, that they will pluck a child from an unsuitable place and put it down in an adoptive home, and everybody will live happily ever after.
We pray that the draconian attitude of social services in the UK towards families and the contempt for the courts do not continue to spread to Ireland. This humble building, this converted cowshed, may no longer be a well-known safe haven for families fleeing, but it has been replaced by a small network of Good Samaritans, which are women who help families and who have now spread from Ireland, where there are at least 5 of them, to 6 other European countries where we have help available. But the tragedy of Sharon Grace and her 2 little girls and this humble building had played another vital part in the development. Over the past 2 years, more than 220 British families have contacted me looking for help, and of those 40 have come here to settle in Ireland, to join hundreds already here. Then in January of 2014, something very strange and quite dramatic began, which is that the world media began to come to Wexford and to come to this building to film it and to also film families here. And over the past 14 months since this began, just in the months before Sharon and her daughter's 10th anniversary, which is very appropriate, this media, which began with Great Britain and Ireland, went global. So that now, here today, in the few weeks before her anniversary, millions of families worldwide have become aware of this terrible problem in Great Britain, where no family is safe. We need to change the law so that the current ideology that the state knows best when it comes for the care of children becomes an ideology that parents know best.